cautious optimism it is. And Rohit spoke about a few of the sort of new trends that happened in hospitality, whether it's pleasure or staycation. Let's talk a little bit, as the world changed and, as people experienced, a significant change in their day-to-day lives, new trends seemingly emerged in as much as travel and tourism is concerned. Let's talk a little bit in this section about what trends you think are sort of here to stay, even post-pandemic. And let me go first to Khun Washirachai to talk about what do you think are some of the trends which have emerged and which you think are now going to stay permanently, or at least for a significantly long period of time.
Okay, thank you very much. But first, I would like to just add a little bit regarding about domestic tourism. Just to share information with you. When we're talking about domestic, it's not just domestic like Thai travel within Thailand, right? I think same in every country when we focus on this. We did a lot of categorize. So again, it's like back us to Mr. Rohit said, there is always an opportunity. So what we have been looking at during that time, so we promote more on the retirement because they can travel every day and they got monies. The new group that we focus more is the workations. Like people are getting tired stay, as you say. So they travel down to like Phuket and working from there with our technologies. Other group, very important ones, those high spending Thai who always go to travel outside, to other countries during that difficult time. They cannot travel in and out. So we promote this group a lot, and they are the high spenders. So that also fill up all the gap of the hospitality. So this group always go up 5 or 6 star hotels as well. So it's really helping every group. Last one, we're also looking at those expats, the foreigners who are in Thailand, which is huge amount. So this also really driving the domestic tourism in the country. So this is, I think, something that I could be shared, and it quite done quite well in maintaining the travel in the industry in Thailand to be moving, constantly. Okay, back to you. What you're asking me on this. I think once it might not be my own idea, but I do agree that the one that will be here for a long time, that would be people will thinking more about the environment, the green tourism, responsible tourism. Actually, we have been talking about this about 20 years already, but I think the trend is more back and giving more importance. When people are traveling now, they will probably select, safety of course, and then what that destination is giving back to the environment or the social. So I think this one would be something very important, that every destinations, every business, you need to have this as an added balance. So this is one of the thing that I would like to give to you. Other things would be like the added values, like how the experience that giving. I think we need to give more like immense, like when tourists traveling to any historical place or any place, they always want like to have more story, what is behind, to get more immense. So I think this is something that will become more important, and people, especially tourists, are looking forward to. So this is what I would like to share with the panel.
Surely, sustainable tourism is certainly something that seems to have caught a lot of people's fancy in the post-pandemic world. Sigit, would you also like to talk a little bit about what you think are some trends which you think are going to stay?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, of course, we project that the things already been changing. Yeah, the condition will not be the same as before. So we project that new travel pattern, new kind of tourism trip will be adjusted. People will not go in lot of group. People tend to be smaller, selected, and also selected destination. That is why mostly what we have been prepared and done in Indonesia, mostly is preparing our destination. As you know, Bali is main destination. We prepare Bali, yeah, including for India market, yeah. Not, I think for all the market, yeah, Bali is very much important. And then we have also 5 super priority destination. As you may heard about that we have Tobalik in North Sumatra, we have Borobudur in Central Java, and we have Mandalika close to Bali, and also Labuan Bajo in East Nusa Tenggara, and we have another one in North Sulawesi, called Likupang. I just been from there, and we mentioned, our colleague from Thailand mentioned about expat. We have done a farm trip with community of expat here in Indonesia. They are from Chinese, and we also like to tap this kind of activity, yeah, because we need to have a new breakthrough, new segment, like for Japan. We will try to do it for ladies market. For India, I believe honeymoon is still to be need to pursue. And then also other, like for China, we will do for more for middle up, like luxury sector, so that what we pursue for the future is more for sustainable. You mentioned for that, and quality tourism, yeah, because people will not be in lot of quantity, but more for quality that we pursue. That is, again, we prepare our destination with the CSSE health protocol, as well as we are now very much active in vaccination program. This is part of the effort of Indonesia government to gain trust and also building confidence, not only for future tourists from other countries, but for Indonesians themselves. Yeah, we need to gain confidence from them, because we are now already been for domestic tourism, yeah, since mid last year, and then the impact is quite good for Java, yeah, but not so much for Bali. So that is why we still a lot to do for Bali destination, and also we pursue other destination that are potential. You see, we have close to Singapore, we have Rio Island, Batam, Bintan, which is our second or third gate for incoming tourists, and we have also other potential destination that we are also need to take care. But most important thing, we need to make sure that the ending of the pandemic is the first concern for us.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's that's very interesting on all the work that you're doing to promote some of these destinations. Ms. Fernando, Sri Lanka has, I think, some of the finest small boutique hotels spread along the length and the breadth of the country. As a trend, are you seeing these being, with higher occupancies during the pandemic? And are there any other trends that you are noticing in Sri Lanka which are sort of emerged from the pandemic and which you think are here to stay?
Sure. I think the change in the mindset of the international traveler started long before COVID. With the online travel agents, people looking to be with the community, experience something unique. I think in Sri Lanka, perhaps we didn't acknowledge that and embrace that enough. And now with COVID, that's slap bang on your face now. You cannot ignore that fact anymore. So I think the mindset of everybody, including ourselves, has changed. We found that very high net worth individuals are also coming to Sri Lanka now on their private jets and so on, looking to have really unique experiences. I mean, we had a case where a Russian gentleman and his family came. He actually hired the whole train because we wanted the social distancing and the bio bubble kept maintained, and we said that there are certified hotels and the bio bubble has to be maintained. So in the end, he actually had the whole train to have that distance. So there are people who are really willing to experience something, whether it is our unique Ayurveda, whether it's our food, whether it's of course the wildlife, which India also is famous for, the plantations and so on. People are willing to pay and have something unique. So this cookie cutter products is no longer going to work. Sustainability has been spoken about and bashed about for years and years, and I think a lot of people didn't take it that seriously, use that as a marketing tool. But really, irrespective of what the consumer wants or not, from a Sri Lankan perspective, we've actually put that as a requirement for new projects. So there's a zero plastic, single-use plastic is banned already, but several initiatives, whether it is renewable energy and so on, we are insisting for new projects actually. So you are using this kind of as opportunity also to this thing. Another one is reaching the consumer. I think from a Sri Lankan's perspective, it didn't reach the consumer enough in the past. It's been going for travel shows and whatever, very focused on that, which is fine. That is also necessary. But I think we need to reach the consumer more. So we had online sort of live streaming of our wildlife for 9 days. We have 7 million followers overseas just following the live streaming. So all that I think we are using to reach the consumer much more. Even our certified hotels, we are sponsoring those, and we are going to the source markets, and we are promoting actual hotels and experiences, which we never ever did that before. So it's in a way an opportunity. We are changing a little bit the way we are doing things. We are not focusing just on a country, whether it is India or UK or whatever. We are looking at experiences. We are making the organization, cutting it in a different way. I think the consumer has changed. We have all changed. And I think that, you could make this an opportunity to get going. And using technology, we are going ahead with the tender for a new travel app. We don't have a travel app. We've studied all the travel apps in the world, found out what the good features are. So we have done the tender now. Very soon, which will go out, and we will have a travel app unique for Sri Lanka, which will really cater. So, I think the consumer has changed, and we need to embrace it, and we could thrive. Sri Lanka, unlike some of our countries, our colleagues on the meeting today, we've never really gone for mass scale tourism. We only had 2.3 million, the height of tourism. So for us, we are not looking for millions and millions of tourists. So we are wanting to keep our island sort of not with too many tourists. So we are working with railways, upgrading carriages. We are looking at Sigiriya, working with them to make it a sustainable destination. So great opportunity, I think, to reset Sri Lanka tourism and give a better product for the consumer. And the Indian market, I tell you, it's a really critical market. I'm so sorry to hear what's happening for COVID at the moment with you, but you will get out, and I pray for that for you, all of you. We signed the travel bubble agreement with your government only a few days ago after following up, and this happened, but we have patience. We wait for our brothers and sisters in India to recover, and then we are really looking forward to welcoming all of you here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fernando, for those kind words. Ms. Brar, just quickly talking about the same subject on emerging trends. Have you noticed anything that you think is going to stick and something that we'll see in the longer term as a trend which may not have been there earlier and emerged more out of what happened during the pandemic?
Only one trend which we see, which would perhaps surely stay, in fact, is the smaller units, the smaller hospitality units, particularly the B&B and the homestay variety, is definitely going to be here to stay. Because in a sense, it's also a paradigm shift in how you look at life itself. And I think it has thrown open an opportunity for all those people who don't necessarily need to sit in structured office environment. And if it was more of an inertia which kept you going to that office frame, here you've actually been given an opportunity to go and work very differently. And you realize that the dongle is perhaps the only thing that you need with you. And I think that is a trend that is likely to stay, because there is a whole sense of complete wellness about one's life, because you are working from home and at the same time you're able to do a lot of things that you would otherwise love to do. You could just get up and bake something, you could just go and do a little quick gardening. Not to say that you would still not work with a focus, but it just allows you to own up your own life a little bit more. And I think that is perhaps a trend which is in India, we do believe is likely to stay, and also because there is enough opportunity to exploit that. There are still, while we look at very dense population areas, however, within India also there are sufficient tracts that are not so dense. And so it's a great opportunity in a sense, I would look at it like that where we can decongest and we can actually move back from the highly congested urban areas to working and staying in these. So that's one trend one definitely sees is likely to stay. And the other, of course, is also the whole thing about the experiential bit. While that was also picking up, it was picking up in terms of the customer satisfaction as to when you went, did you just want to see a hard monument there, to actually going and living the life of a local is something that is fascinating the Indians also about their own country. Interestingly, it's not just about the inbound coming, but the realization that if I'm moving from one state or one district or one province to another, and I'm experiencing an entirely different, story about how they live, how they talk, how they dress, the kind of music that they listen to. So the immersive experiences and the need for those is also something that we are seeing a huge growth in. And that's something I'm sure is also going to stay, because if we see the kind of content that is coming on digital media, we are also developing that kind of content, and also the kind of demand that there exists in the market for that kind of content. And also the role of doing things themselves, is something which is an increased focus. So earlier, if you were happy to just watch somebody else make that mural, you actually want to stand there and paint and draw yourself. So I think those are some of the changes which are definitely going to stay. And in that, we see a lot of potential for a country like India, which is totally powered by tangible and intangible heritage. And that's an area we haven't really worked on in a very systematic manner. And in times to come, in fact, it's a very exciting opportunity, if I may say so. While currently, yes, COVID is dampening a lot of things, but in terms of preparing ourselves for times to come, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and we kind of sort of sit on a cusp in how to leverage on all the diversity that we talk about in India.
Absolutely. I think the whole move to sort of have a differentiated experience and experiential stays, I think is gaining ground. Rohit, does that mean music to your ears? And as much as amã is concerned, is that seeing some really exponential growth?
Yes, thank you. In fact, it's so interesting that all the trends that have been spoken till now are actually something that we're already working on over the last maybe more than 2 years, and COVID just kind of hastened that. So if we look at sustainable tourism, obviously very big. Immersive travel, like Ms. Brar mentioned, very important, and also homestays, and like you rightly mentioned, our amã brand. We have seen an exponential growth in people who like to tie up with our brand and offer their products to us. And we are hoping that we will be very soon operating over 100 homestay products in the subcontinent. Another thing that is as a trend that has come up, and when we spoke about sustainable tourism and immersive experiences, as you're aware, we run something called Taj Safaris, which are our safari lodges in our national parks. For immersive experience that as Parag was mentioning, we have the Pardi experience. The Pardi tribe stays there, and they were previously known to being going after killing tigers, etc., for various purposes. But now they have very good tracking instinct. So we have trained them to become naturalists and guides for us, and they take our guests into the jungle like how a tribe would walk. So it's all about creating those immersive experiences that is totally differentiating you from the humdrum of the whole pandemic and taking you away into a different world. One thing that I must say that has taken off well, and I think this is one example, everybody talks about digital, but the real thing is going to be phygital, because phygital is what is really helping us today in the MICE segment. And we have a product, Acumen. Acumen is our home delivery app in which we host digital conferences, and we also provide meals during the conference. So the meals are simultaneously delivered across the country in 2 locations of people, allowing conferencing to take place and people to experience a conference, an event, a convention, at the same time get the hospitality of the Taj. So I guess how we can see an opportunity, how we can latch onto an opportunity, and rather than fighting it and saying that digital will take away MICE, I think it is how you build on digital and help you grow. And I guess that's what the emerging trends for us are. Our resorts have done exceedingly well, whether there's in Coorg, in Bekal, in Rishikesh, and also, like I mentioned, in Safari Lodges. Ms. Brar mentioned about Srinagar, and obviously, yes, we are very grateful that there's a lot of domestic travel to take care of that. But the emerging trend going forward is one, domestic for us for the next 6 to 10 months, if not more. And the second would be sustainable, immersive experiences. And the third would be combination of physical and digital MICE events.
So lots of new vocabulary during COVID, phygital being added to that, as was workation some time ago, and there are several others. But Nishant, we'll move to the sort of last section as we're running out of time. And I want to talk a little bit in the last section about how each one of you sees the future of travel. And the one thing that I'd like all of you to talk about, briefly, is when do you think we are going to see a sort of normal coming back? What's that timeline that you see? Are we sort of, is this whole vaccination drive across the world going to sort of propel that, the communication we've been reading about vaccination passports? Is that going to become probably the most important travel document that we'll need to have as we go further? Just a quick wrap up on what you think is going to happen to travel. What's the sort of crystal gazing in as much as all of you are concerned? And what do you think will happen, in terms of some trends, on one of them being this whole thing about, vaccination passports? We'll start with you, Nishant.
All right. I guess first and foremost, travel is here to stay. It's not going to stop, and it's never going to stop. So this has been the sunrise industry, and whilst it was the first industry to stop functioning as soon as we got into COVID, I guess this segment has got the potential to bounce back pretty rapidly. From a Tourism Australia perspective, the future is quite optimistic. Pre-COVID, India was the fastest growing inbound market for Tourism Australia for 3 consecutive years across all the 15 international markets that we're present in. We have achieved 6 consecutive years of double-digit growth, not just in arrivals, but also spent by Indian tourists. And whilst the Indian outbound travel industry grew by almost 8%, arrivals into Australia grew by almost 16% year on year. So we are growing at a rate which was double the rate of the Indian outbound travel industry. So we have set ourselves quite an ambitious task, and we believe that India could be in the potential of achieving 1 million visitor arrivals into Australia over the next decade or so. There's an India economic strategy that was unveiled by the Australian government, and it's primarily to focus on India as a market, not just for tourism, but also for trade, education, agriculture, maritime security, and other, there's quite a few MOUs which have been signed between the 2 prime ministers at the recently held virtual bilateral summit that was attended by Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So the future is quite optimistic. And what we're doing at this point of time at Tourism Australia are 3 things. First thing that we're doing is to keep the lights on. It's been 12 months since we haven't had a single tourist who have visited Australia, but we have been through our content and social amplification initiatives, we have been trying to keep the lights on, keeping Australia's attractiveness right up there in the consideration set of a high value travelers. We have been engaging with the tourism industry at both ends. We have a program called the Aussie Specialist Agents, where we have trained almost over 18,000 agents during this particular pandemic. On the consumer front, when the Indian cricket team traveled to Australia for the Border Gavaskar series and the series that we won, there are a lot of interesting initiatives which were undertaken. We partnered with a lot of OTT platforms. We've worked with a lot of influencers and advocates to raise the profile of Australia. So we will continue to keep the lights on, and Australia today enjoys the highest intention and consideration amongst the Indian travelers. So that's the first thing that we're doing. The second thing that we're doing is keeping ourselves ready to launch as soon as the borders open. So we're launching new products, new experiences, and new destinations within Australia that would resonate amongst the experiential, immersive Indian traveler. We're trying to seek develop new partnerships with banks, partnership with credit card companies, who we believe will have access to customers who will have the propensity to travel to Australia as soon as the borders open. So we are keeping ourselves ready to launch as soon as the borders open. And last but not the least, what we're doing is keeping the India dream alive, because India as a source market has got tremendous potential. The Modi government has got this ambition of making India a 5 trillion economy by FY 2025 or so. As we speak, outbound travel out of India, it's just, or leisure travel is just 4 million out of the 26 million outbound travel. So, and that represents just 0.3% of India's population. So imagine this, if this 0.3% even doubles to 0.6% or even 1% of the population of the country who's able to take an international holiday, this country has got tremendous potential, and there are a lot of opportunities in this particular industry. And whether it's in terms of building your career, starting your own businesses, this is the sunrise industry, and this is the industry for the future.
Great. Ms. Fernando, your views on how it's going to pan out? The recovery of tourism?
Yes, I think there are 3 areas that we need to ensure that the traveler is reassured. From a Sri Lankan context, we have taken every single step possible to ensure that the traveler is reassured. We've got an insurance as well for $12 for 1 month. It covers 50,000 insurance cover. So we've had experience in handling that, got complimented on it. The community needs to be reassured, so we keep various programs. We go on TV, we have discussions with them to reassure them. We reassure the employees, very important, and their families. That is very important, that we have a strict health protocol. Vaccination is going to be critical. I think UK particularly has done particularly well there, and that's another area. We have a huge market there, so this is something we are looking forward to. We are giving opportunities to hotels to be quarantine hotels, hospitals as well. Hotels also are realizing that there are areas that they need to look at, whether it is medical tourism or other areas that we will now going forward to look at. It is not from a Sri Lankan perspective, it's not really the numbers, it's the yield that we will look at more so, value for money, unique experience. With India particularly, you know that we are a small island, we are unique, we are compact, we have everything to offer to you, and we have an amazing flight connectivity with your country and ours. So yes, I look at it absolutely positively. Sri Lanka has gone through a war for 30 years, terrorism for 30 years. We went through tsunami. We had Easter Sunday bombing. We are quite familiar with crisis. This one has been the biggest one, I think, possibly in a different way. So we are ready. We are meeting the challenges, and we will somehow thrive and come out of this.
Absolutely. Won't we all? Sigit, your views on when do you think it's going to get back to normal?
Yes, for Indonesia, tourism is very much important, as you know. That is why we are very much concerned on the revival of tourism and creative economy in Indonesia. And for this matter, as I mentioned earlier, that while we will continue preparing our destination, hotel, restaurant, tourist attraction with CSSE health protocol. We also been active with vaccination program. We will start with our communication campaign. We have the timeline. We set the timeline. Then will lead to border opening hopefully. But again, one of the requirement, the most important one, is the way handling of the pandemic. We focus on Bali as the main destination to consider to be open first, we have 3 locations, Nusa Dua, Sanur, and Ubud in Bali. And then we have also possible to open also in Bintan, Lagoy, and Batam, Nongsa. So this location we've been watching and even monitoring almost every week. We have a very intense coordination with related Ministry Foreign Affairs, Immigration, and Ministry of Health to make sure that everything been ready once we lead to the decision. And we hope that the result will come out at the earliest convenience, because our industry and tourism and creative economy been suffering for more than 1 year. So again, we prepare and we will see as soon as possible for Indian market and also other tourists from all over the world. Thank you.
Kun Wachirachai, when do you think you will have 40 million tourists back in Thailand?
Okay, I happy to share with you that now, I got a lot of inquiry asking when Thailand is opening. So now at least what we have in our hand is our roadmap to reopen Thailand for vaccinated tourists first. Okay, so it's phase by phase, step by step. So start from this month, 1st of April, okay, we have reduced the date of quarantines. Okay, for those who have been vaccinated, will only be 7 days. Those who don't, okay, will be 10 days. Okay, and then what I really and many people are looking forward is that 1st of July, we plan to open Phuket Island for vaccinated tourists without quarantines. So before we open, we need to prepare everything. Our plan is that people on the island need to be vaccinated 70% as well. So it has to be both, to ensure people within the islands and who coming all safe. All right. And then next step is October. The major destination will be opened up without quarantine for vaccinated again tourists, including Krabi, Phang Nga, Samui, Pattaya, and Chiang Mai. So we do it step by step on this. So this is already be announced, and we are again, same as everyone, optimistic and have to be confident that we are going as our plan. Just to share with you, India is a very huge market and very important market for Thailand and every other countries. Indian outbound very important, and I think this is a very good spirit that you see in the past. There are always events, physical, online going on. So this is something that really keep the industry for India and other countries moving as well. I probably once India's opening, we also have a lot of Thai who are looking forward to come to travel to India as well. So many Thai are also missing India, same as many Indians, I believe, are missing Thailand as well. So
Correct.
This is what I'd like to share with you. Right.
Quick question to you, and I'm going to ask this across the panel. Do you think you will have normalcy in your travel or, in global travel in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? Just one answer.
Normalcy, right? I think that might be happening, crossing my fingers, by 2022, I believe, according to our roadmap as well. I think people could be easily traveling this year, but there probably would be a lot of protocol, applying for visas. When in the country, maybe you still have to, the outbound application, that kind of stuff. So
2022 is your answer.
I think that would be my personal answer. Yes.
Okay. Rohit, coming to you.
In terms of the answer, you're talking about when we see a recovery?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first I think we need to stabilize the situation, and to be very honest, I think we're going a little bit up and down in instability. We were making good progress till this current wave hit us. So I think, international travel for India to recover requires a couple of things to be put in place. One is, safety protocols, vaccination drives, etc., to ensure a similar thing like you're talking about Phuket. Have a bio-bubble kind of a situation which encourages people and give to travel. I think technology and communication play a very key role in promoting India destination. We would like to work at a PPP model with the government and look at promoting Incredible India with diverse and immersive experiences. I think you have to do some things, and only then can you get the result. And I think we feel that by around this has been a setback. I would have said 2022 to you earlier, but now I don't think it's going to be 2022, considering the current wave, and by the time it stabilizes and markets change, I would say 2023 is when I see international tourism. I'm not talking about domestic. I'm talking about international tourism resuming in India. Basically, Indian hospitality encapsulated in what we call Tajness, which you feel with your eyes closed. We believe that a lot of people are waiting to experience that.
Absolutely. Last word to you, Ms. Prad.
I wish I had a crystal ball there, but it looks tough for now. It looks tough for now for next year to be absolutely normal. But yes, a lot of travel will inch back. That's also a fact, because hopefully if a few months go by when the pandemic is not so evident and on the surface, people are itching to travel. There is no question of that. People are wanting to travel. And I think it's an intrinsic human trait to travel. And that's why they say that humans were not born with roots, but feet. So hopefully that instinct will get people back to travel. But late 22 would look at a large number, but coming back to normalcy might be looking at 23, ceteris paribus.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's been a wonderful discussion that we've spent a little over an hour talking about. Some great thoughts, some great views here. I think the takeaways are several, but the larger one that I see is that travel is very, very intrinsic to all our lives. It isn't going anywhere, neither is this industry. We're only waiting impatiently to be able to travel. All kinds of digital stuff may happen, but the need for us to actually travel is absolutely, deeply ingrained in our DNA as humans. So that's not going anywhere. It probably will take a little longer than we probably thought. Specifically, I'm talking at the moment of India, but in some countries like Australia, I see that coming back a little more quicker, and even in Sri Lanka, given that their cases are limited. But in any case, we're saying by the end of 22 or middle of 23, we hope to see a world which is getting back to normal. We've discovered new things. We've discovered the sustainability angle. When everything got shut down and we saw a world which was very different, which was very pristine. The flowers look prettier, the trees look greener, and we want that world back. So there's going to be work on sustainable travel. There's going to be work on bubbles that are going to be created between countries, even in domestic travel. I think boutique leisure will be something that everybody will be looking at to stay in smaller, more intimate places. Lots of stuff emerging. We're going through a very difficult time. Everyone has dealt with it, very, very bravely. Countries have fought back and continue to fight back, some more successful than the others. But the bottom line is, we're all waiting to travel, and we can't wait to get onto a trip as soon as we can. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my extreme pleasure to talk to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for sparing the time and all your views, which have enlightened the audience, I would imagine.
Thank you, Mandeep, for this fabulous moderation and great insights into what our panelists shared with everybody. There are a few questions that we have in our inbox. And the first question, if I may go ahead and just ask Nishant. Entry to Australia allowed for tourists from other countries, and if what is required to carry? Also, their relaxation for one who is vaccinated is currently considered as a positive thing.
All right. So as we speak, the international borders are shut. Indians can only travel to Australia on compelling and compassionate grounds. So when you apply for your visa application on the homeaffairs.gov.au website, you also need to simultaneously fill up an exemption form. And once the exemption form is approved and your visa is granted, you would be allowed to travel to Australia. Once you land in Australia, you will have to undergo institutional quarantine at your own cost at a pre-designated hotel. And therefore, you don't have to undergo any vaccination or have to undergo any additional medical tests at this point of time. But as we speak, there are no commercial flights operating between India and Australia. There's no air travel bubble that's currently existing between the two countries. So travel is only allowed on compelling and compassionate grounds.
Okay, thank you, Nishant. This question is for Ms. Brar. It says we have a unique problem at a time when travel is important and urgent. Today, you think of plug-in stops in Czech, especially after the big people's event like a Mahakumbh challenge. How do we strike a balance, and how do you work on high-value tourism?
Yeah, I think in fact that is the focus area of the policy that is coming up on striking the right balance between the numbers. So the two options as we look at, and that's where the opportunity actually lies for us, that in the past we haven't been spreading out our destinations. So one idea is to spread the destinations, and the development that comes up needs to be of a sustainable model, whether it is not only high value, but I would say better value for money tourism is how we are looking at it.
Okay. And just a follow-up question to the same is this a good time that can be used by tourism officers to culturally orient travel community with online events?
Oh, absolutely. I think everything has been going online, whether it is domestic communication or overseas. We've been having all our events pretty much only on the platforms that we are talking on right now, or at best doing hybrids. We of course have attempted doing a few physical events off and on, but the large part of it, making sure that the social distancing is followed, has largely respected the digital platforms. And yes, I think most of the industry is on board and everyone seems to be pretty comfortable, including organizing very fancy looking conference, showcasing it, and you actually feel you're entering into a physical space, because I think technology and the mandarins of technology have really come up with some smart solutions, and it's for all of us to work together to adopt them.
And this is a question for Ms. Fernando, for you. It says, during the post-pandemic, the second wave, so to say, the marketing support that you've given is excellent. Your cancellation policies and new product launches have also spurred travel further. I feel your timing has been critical in the revival of tourism. Can you identify some more points which are key for revival of tourism in Sri Lanka?
I think it was working in a team with other ministries, continuous communication, keeping people updated. I think sometimes there's a lot of noise, particularly in Asia. There's lots of views and points of view, and people criticize but I think you should go with what is right, and then people figure it out. Because if you go to get consensus all the time, so with the buyer bubble concept, which we came up, it has been a success. So I think come up with something unique for your country that works for your country. I think that's something that you should do for each. I mean, I saw in Indonesia now they're with Bali and so on. So each country has their own way of doing it. For Sri Lanka, we've offered the whole country is open. All nationalities are welcome, but you need to be in a buyer bubble if you're not vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, it's just one night.
Thank you. Just your question, I suppose, is general to all the panelists. What is the message to bolster confidence to students in hospitality courses across all countries facing the prospect of a challenging future? I mean, everybody is concerned. The students are concerned about their future, about their jobs after they do their programs. And what is the message that we would like to share with them? Ms. Brar, would you want to go first?
Surely, I was going to volunteer. I think it's a way to look at it, and if I look back at history, being a student of history cannot but avoid going back to history, that the human race has been confronted by all kinds of challenges and immense ones. And when a challenge strikes, it is truly the most difficult time that when we live through it appears to be. But then out of challenges not only come opportunities, but also life goes back. And I think that's where, when I look at particularly India or even the world is truly at a cusp at this point of time. And there is a lot of, in fact, there's going to be a lot of research as we may, call for it. Because imagine a year and a half of none of us being able to do what we would truly like to do. So there is really no reason for us to kind of lose heart on that. There have been world wars before this, there's been the Spanish flu before this, there have been the plague and whatnot. So I think at every point of time, if we look back, the mankind has found solutions and has come out and has emerged much stronger and with better solutions, in fact. So I see absolutely no reason why the student community should lose heart. It's probably a good time to learn some more skills. It's a time to invest on learning. It's a time to grow yourselves and skill yourselves up better. Better times are waiting for you.
Ibrar, also, may I request you to just share about the success of tourism in Kashmir in the last few months or year?
Yes, surely. You see, interestingly, and that's where it really, and these are those examples that actually make you feel so much more confident. When we looked at the data of the domestic traveler this year, over the last January, it's actually shown a significant increase in terms of numbers. And in February, the domestic numbers were about 29,000 travelers, and March already has 46,000 domestic travelers. And all spectrums of the units are full, whether you are looking at the most expensive, high-end, or you're looking at the really modest, simple stays. Each of them is reporting full absolutely capacity. A place like Khyber, you can't get a room till 30th June. It's one of the most expensive properties in India. And people are not just sticking to their rooms, they're actually wandering around, they're traveling, they are in the gardens, they are in the shikaras, the houseboats are full. I think it's been a great learning, in fact, from Kashmir. They are, of course, when you land at the Srinagar airport, the rapid antigen test is mandatory. Even if you come with a test that has been done on you, they're still insisting on a RAT. And I think that's what's keeping them good for now. So yes, we will need to respect a few protocols. It's in the interest of everyone. But Kashmir story doing absolutely wonderful. The ski slopes in Gulmarg, absolutely full. The classroom at the Institute of Skiing and Mountaineering has had little children and all their sessions have gone fully attended. So some really heartening stories coming from Jammu and Kashmir.
That's fabulous. Absolutely very encouraging, I must say. I heard there were 50,000 odd tourists during the tulips blooming time.
Tulip Festival.
Tulip Festival.
Mr. Jamal, I had a comment
please do.
in addition to Ms. Brar's response to the students who are graduating. You know, what happens is that this is also time to relook at options. You know, what is necessary. Traditional hoteliering is not what is going to be, because hoteliering in itself is changing. So, you know, with the advent of homestays and small resorts and niche, hospitality products, rather than, chasing long time established brands and, looking at traditional careers in hospitality, one needs to look at alternate careers. There's nothing wrong in running a small lodge somewhere. There's nothing wrong in overseeing a group of lodges in a location. At the same time, if you're a chef, it's not necessary for you to work in a 5-star hotel. Today we have cloud kitchens, which are really coming up because of the huge demand on home deliveries. So pursue careers in hospitality, but don't go by the trusted old-fashioned system. We have to open our mind and look at new avenues of growing our careers in hospitality. That's my suggestion to the students.
Thank you,
Absolutely valid one, Rohit.
Very, very good. Thank you. Nishant, do you have anything to add to this?
I guess, both Ms. Brar and Rohit has summarized it. But if you look at any and every segment of travel, whether it's inbound travel into India, outbound travel out of India, or domestic travel within India itself, which is almost like over 1.6 billion trips, I guess there's opportunity across every segment of travel. And as Rohit rightly said, you don't have to, believe in those tried and tested methods, or you don't have to, aim and aspire to work with airlines, or you have to work with some of the top tour operators in the country, but you can start something on your own as well. And there's tremendous potential that this country has to offer. So yeah, it's all good. The future looks quite promising, and it's a great industry to build your personal career.
So the last question. How do the panelists see the bubble sports tourism future? Sustainable, not sustainable? Because they seem to be stopping. They're still continuing without any spectators, and most of the large international events even are continuing. actually. How do you see
In
this?
fact, Farhad,
Yeah.
when the Indian cricket team traveled to Australia for the Border Gavaskar series, there were spectators allowed in all the Australian stadiums, whether it's the MCG, the SCG, the Adelaide Oval, the Gabba, where we won the final test match. There were spectators allowed at almost over 50% capacity. And it all effectively depends on how well you manage the pandemic and the spread of the virus in your own country. So safety and security is going to be extremely important before allowing, and managing these or organizing these large-scale events. So yes, it's a different energy altogether watching a game at the MCG and SCG, and you cannot replace that by sitting in front of the television. We have the T20 World Cup taking place in Australia in 2022 October, November. Hopefully the borders would open by then, but even the men's World Cup, which was slated to happen in October and November 2020, we had already received over 20,000 bookings from India 9 months before the tournament. So that just demonstrates the potential of sports tourism and watching live events at an international destination.
That's brilliant, actually. Ms. Fernando, you had the English cricketers in Sri Lanka.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
You know spectators?
Yes, we didn't initially allow spectators for the first few matches. We are quite strict about the Buyer Bubble concept, so they were separately kept in separate hotels. They had a doctor with them as well. They went in a transport separately for them, and they went to the stadium and played. So that and also another area which we are now created a one-stop shop is the film tourism. This is also another area that the film tourism is another area that we are looking at, because there's a lot of approvals to be got. So we are creating it as you speak, film tourism, one-stop shop, a place where we would assist. And interestingly, when the previous question you asked about students, but Sri Lankan context, actually the investments in tourism went up in 2020 compared to 2019. So we are having the port city as well. So there's more capacity coming in that we require. So there's a need for more well-trained employees in the hospitality industry.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fernando. Now, I think that was the last question that I had on this list. So I'm just opening for last comments if anybody has to make. Would you now request Mr. Ajit Mangulkar?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as we come to the conclusion of this need of the hour discussion session, may I request Mr. Ajit Mangulkar, Director General, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present the vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Mangulkar.
Thank you, Selby, and a very, very good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. I think this has been a fantastic interaction. I mean, to hear international experts talk about tourism and travel in this current scenario has been a really an enriching experience. At the outset, I must thank our moderator, Mr. Mandeep Lamba, and all our esteemed panelists, Ms. Rupinder Brar, Mr. Sigit, Ms. Kimarali Fernando, Mr. Nishant Kashikar, Mr. Siri Sumpan, and Mr. Rohit Khosla. I would also like to thank Mr. Bhuvnesh Khanna for his special remarks. I thank all of you all for sparing your valuable time and being with us today, and also for sharing your valuable expertise. Your presence and active participation immensely contributed to the success of this event. IMC has been instrumental in initiating such progressive interactive sessions and actively taking up issues on behalf of Indian businesses, which play a pivotal role in providing inputs on policy formation to promote the interest of the sector, community, and country at large. Today's online interaction was unique. The objective of this interaction was to have leaders from the travel and tourism industry from India, Australia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, and to have a dialogue and share measures taken by each nation to rebuild tourism and enhance regional coordination for a sector that is going through its darkest hour in recent history. Encouraging news on vaccines has boosted hopes for recovery, but challenges remain. Domestic tourism has restarted, but the current second wave has come as another setback. However, real recovery will only be possible when international tourism returns. Will it be 2022? Will it be 2023? Well, we can just hope that it is as early as possible. While flexible policy solutions are needed to enable the tourism economy to live alongside the virus in the short to medium term, it is important to look beyond this and to take steps to learn from the crisis, which has revealed gaps in government and industry preparedness and response capacity. Coordinated action across governments across the world at all levels and the private sector is essential. On behalf of IMC and its Travel, Tourism and Hospitality Committee, I wish to extend our sincere thanks to our platinum sponsor, the Indian Hotels Company Limited, and supporting sponsor, Concept Hospitality Private Limited, the Fern Hotels and Resorts, for the confidence that they have reposed in IMC through their association with this event. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge BW Communities as our esteemed media partner for the event. I extend our sincere thanks to all our participants, business executives, members representing travel, tourism, and hospitality industry for joining this event. I would also like to thank members of our IMC Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality Committee, headed by Mr. Farhad Jamal, for putting this interaction together. And last but not the least, I thank our team IMC, led by Officer in Charge, Assistant Director Anup Misal, for making this event happen. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a very, very great audience and a great interaction. Thank you to all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Farhad.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.